Stop. Don't touch his chest. Don't run your fingers through his hair. Don't even think about that slow, tempting caress you've been planning, because the truth is, his body isn't the part that will make him truly surrender to you. The real part? It's invisible. You can't see it in the mirror. But if you touch it right, he'll feel like you've reached straight into his soul, and he won't want to let you go. Most women think physical touch is the key to deep attraction. Sure, it feels good. But the kind of surrender I'm talking about happens when you touch something deeper, his emotional core. The place where his dreams live, where his fears hide, where his sense of purpose burns. That's the switch. And when you flip it, every wall comes down. He stops guarding himself. He starts opening up in ways he doesn't with anyone else. That's when you become unforgettable. Not because you touched his skin, but because you touched him. A man's body might follow desire, but his soul will only follow a woman who touches his mind. Let that sink in for a moment. We've been told so many things, haven't we? That to get a man's attention you need perfect hair, the right heels, and a flawless waist-to-hip ratio. That seduction lives in the curve of your body, the flutter of your eyelashes, or the shade of your lipstick. But what if I told you that's the biggest lie you were ever taught? Because the truth is, the most powerful part of a man isn't his body. It's something you can't see. It's the quiet place behind his eyes, the inner world he hides even from himself. His private kingdom, his storms, his stories. And if you want him to truly surrender, not just flirt, not just follow, not just imagine, but surrender, you don't touch his skin, you touch his mind. If this already feels true deep inside you, hit that like button right now and subscribe, not for me, but for you. Because what we're about to explore isn't just dating advice, it's a complete shift. Once you see this clearly, you'll stop chasing affection and start attracting it naturally. Picture this. You walk into a room. You're not the loudest. You're not even the one most dressed up. Yet somehow, heads turn. Not because you're showing more skin, but because you're radiating something else. A quiet power that speaks louder than any outfit. A presence that can't be explained, but can only be felt. That's not an act, and it's not a trick. That is real feminine sacred power. Most women try to impress with what they wear. The unforgettable ones? They impress with what they make someone feel. Somewhere along the way, society handed you a shallow playbook. Be attractive, be easygoing, be desirable, but never too deep, never too strong, never too real. And yet here you are, doing everything you were told would work, and still wondering why the connection fades, why the chase ends, why the man who seems so drawn to you now seems distracted. The truth might sting a little. He didn't lose interest in you. He never truly saw you in the first place. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart." Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. When you understand that a man's true connection begins in his mind, the world behind his confidence, his humor, his charm, everything changes. You don't have to seduce with your body when you can live in his thoughts. You don't have to raise your voice when your silence can echo in him for hours. And I know what you might be thinking, but what if he doesn't respond? Then he simply wasn't meant to receive you, because this kind of energy doesn't chase. It doesn't beg to be chosen. It is the choice. And once you learn to reach him here, points to head, his heart and his hands will follow, not as a strategy, but as a natural reaction. The woman who knows how to touch a man's mind doesn't compete. She doesn't put on a show. She simply exists in her truth. And that's exactly why he can't forget her. The real spark isn't just visual. It's emotional memory. He won't truly crave your body until he craves how you make him feel. Most women are too focused on being seen to ever be truly felt. Think about that for a moment. You've been told that visual appeal is everything. That a man's desire is all about what he sees, the right photo, the perfect pose, the curve of your hips. But here's what they don't tell you. Attraction might start with what he sees, but obsession starts with what he feels. Because what he sees might catch his attention, but what he feels will carve your name into his memory. Imagine walking down a hallway lined with dozens of paintings, bold colors, perfect symmetry, flawless technique. They're all beautiful, polished, safe, but one painting stops you in your tracks. It's not the biggest or the brightest, but it moves you. There's something about it that whispers instead of shouts, and long after you've left the hallway, that's the one you remember. Why? Because it made you feel something. That's you. You don't have to be the most perfect, filtered, edited version of femininity. You need to be the woman who leaves an emotional imprint. That look you give him that says more than words ever could. That moment of silence that stays with him longer than a dozen clever lines. The unconscious mind doesn't care about perfect. It craves truth. And truth isn't posed, it's felt. Carl Jung also said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That's as true in love as it is in life. If you keep chasing approval by performing, if your worth depends on whether he replies, if your confidence rises and falls with his attention, you're living on autopilot. You're appealing to the surface when what you crave is a connection deep beneath it. Ever wonder why some women can leave a man completely captivated with just one sentence, while others can't get a reply after days of trying? It's not luck. It's about emotional atmosphere. It's the woman who can walk into a room and shift the energy just by being there. Not louder, not dressed more provocatively, just more real. He may not even understand why he's drawn to you, but he feels it. It's in the calm you bring when others are trying too hard. It's in the way you're present when others are performing. It's in your ability to say less and still be heard more. A man might enjoy what you show him, but he will never forget how you made him feel. Let that sink in, because this is where the game changes. You don't need him to look at you longer. You want him to feel you after you've walked away, when he's alone, when it's quiet, when he's going about his day and suddenly your voice, your look, your energy enters his mind uninvited. That's emotional imprinting. And that's where real desire comes alive. So ask yourself, are you being noticed or are you being remembered? When you stop trying to impress and start expressing your energy through presence, you become unforgettable, not because you forced it, but because it's simply who you are. This isn't about being the fantasy. It's about touching the part of him he didn't think anyone could reach. And here's the deeper truth. If you can speak the language of his unconscious, you don't just start a connection. You ignite a fire he didn't even know existed. If you talk only to his logical mind, you might keep his interest. But if you speak to the deeper part of him, the one holding dreams he hasn't voiced, wounds he hasn't healed, fears he hasn't admitted, you own his fascination. The man you see on the outside, with all his habits and charm, isn't the whole man. The real man lives in the quiet spaces beneath the surface. And that's the part of him you need to reach if you want a connection that lasts. It speaks in images. Read that again. It doesn't speak English. It speaks in symbols, emotions, and energy. So if you want to reach that deeper part of a man, the part that gets hooked and starts replaying moments with you over and over when you're not around, you don't need perfect words. You need the right frequency. Let me give you a picture. Imagine you're standing in a forest. It's quiet. The air is still. Then you strike a tuning fork. You don't shout. You don't dance. You simply vibrate. And that sound travels, it moves through the air, wakes birds from branches, and changes everything around, without you saying a single word. That's what it feels like when a woman speaks from a place of emotional tuning. Her words may be few, her voice may be soft, but what she says stays, because the feminine isn't about force, it's about being felt. Here's where a lot of women panic. They think, what if he doesn't understand? What if I need to spell it out? What if I seem too deep or too much? Listen closely. If a man is ready for depth, he doesn't need you to water yourself down. He will recognize your energy even if he can't explain why. So stop shrinking yourself just to be understood. Start speaking in your natural emotional language. He doesn't need another clever line. He needs something real, something that quietly tugs at his memory. That moment when your eyes met and he couldn't figure out why it hit so hard. That's the moment he takes to bed with him. That's the moment he thinks about in the middle of a meeting. That's what he comes back to when every other connection feels empty. When you speak using emotional images, when you weave meaning into moments, you don't just create a spark, you plant a symbol. And symbols live forever. Now, let's go deeper into a form of feminine power most people overlook. How to imprint, not impress. There's a huge difference between being liked in the moment and being remembered in silence. It's not what you say, it's what echoes afterward. That's the secret most people never learn. It's the reason some women stay in a man's mind while others fade quickly. Let me ask you, have you ever said all the right things, been open, shared your heart, performed a version of yourself you thought he wanted, only to be met with indifference or silence, and then someone else enters his life, says very little, doesn't chase, doesn't perform, uses no tricks, and suddenly she's in his head? Why? Because she didn't try to impress him, she'd left an imprint. Impressions fade, imprints remain. Think of it like this. A room is filled with balloons, bright, floating, cheerful noise. And in the middle of it all, a single candle flickers, quiet, steady. Where does your attention go? To the flame, because deep inside, we aren't drawn to noise, we're drawn to meaning. That's how a man experiences the difference between a woman who performs for him and a woman who simply exists in her own presence. Men don't bond through performance, they bond through resonance, through a feeling they can't explain but can't stop